Well, good morning. We're at the Peterson Museum. It's July 1st, 2002. My name is Bill Pollack, and our guest this morning is George Barris. And George is one of the original people to do things like this, to make some of the cars back in the 40s and 50s beautiful and do special things. I want to hear about it, because I remember seeing some of these crazy cars.
Well, of course, we go back to many, many years, and the history of what has been done is just growing more and more. And fortunate, like people like yourselves and myself, for the many years have been able to pioneer this many customizing that's been done in hot rods way back to the 40s. And of course, the example of the Hero Hot America is one of the popular ones, and it just gives you an idea of what can be done to a 51 Mercury if you really want to tear into it.
Yeah.
And the fun of it is that to take a car, and in the pioneering days, to change it because it's beautiful as it was, but you want to make it look better, and that's the purpose of customizing, is to take your stock car and make it a part of what you are, like an extension of yourself, your customer, whomever you're doing it for. And that's why chopping tops and sectioning and dropping them over the frame and channeling makes
When
the
you
car
started out, did you know what you were going to, did you have it all planned out, or did you just kind of wing it?
Well, actually, there was nobody to teach you, pioneering back in 1940 when I started. So I'm what you call self-taught. My parents gave me a 1925 Buick, what we call a hand-me-down, to my brother and myself. And I just liked to do work that, we had a hotel and a restaurant, and I just didn't want to wash dishes. So I went ahead and started going to the five and dime store and won a couple of contests with some balsa wood models, and everything kind of fell together. You know how you feel that you want to do something, and so you actually do plan it within a reason by customizing, changing the grill, making the forming, making it look lower, putting a special top, skirts, wheels. You formulate it. It has to be something. The only hit and miss you get is if you're doing something and it doesn't look what you feel it looks like on paper or in the model form in real full size, you make some alterations because of sizing. But basically, you do know your format.
What were some of your early custom jobs? I know you did a bunch of stuff for movies too.
Well, the movies was strong way back in the 50s, but we kind of started in the 40s.
Yeah.
And that was the little Deuce Roadster I had with a Duval windshield, which we call a split windshield, and cat-eye taillights and recessed license plates. That was the starting of it. And then my little 36 Ford, I had a Packard grill and alligator hood and Pontiac panels. And then I started Frenching the fenders in. That makes it the body into one piece. And then that went on into the full-fendered 44s, where we would section them, get rid of that big body height, and chop the top to get rid of that big top.
They were tall, weren't they?
And they were tall. They were very tall. And the big fat fenders, of course, along with a high body and a high top, just made it where it wasn't proportioned. So when you make a photograph and cut it together and piece it together.
Is that what you would do?
Yeah, many times. I'd photograph the car in many angles, and I'd cut out and paste them together, and you get it down to a section where you think that you have to take a 3-inch chop and a 4-inch body channel and 3 inches over the frame, and then you start getting it to where, oh boy, now it's looking like something you kind of like. So this is what excites you, is that as you're doing these different things, as well as balsa wood models and sketching and making different things, makes it fun for yourself, and as well as if you're doing it for a client, the main thing is that you're satisfying them. That's something they would like too. See, the movie thing really came in 1950. We were at that period of time in hot rodding. You remember those days? We used to pound down the street, meet at Piccadilly's, and go up Sepulveda and drag race on the streets, and of course, being militants, that means we raced the streets. It was illegal. The only problem is that the police would chase us, and sometimes when my little Deuce Roadster, I had some bullet holes in the trunk.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. We've had some exciting. And in fact, it's kind of fun, because what we did in the 50s in street racing is really what formulated the Fast and Furious street racers today. It's the same consequence. You meet in some place, you go out, you race, not to be racing, but you really would race for the pink slips of your automobiles. If you didn't win, you lost your car. And so you would really have to think that, God, if I'm going to race that little Deuce Roadster or that 36, I got to beat him because I don't want to lose my car. So that's how I did it. So the Militants kind of made us look where we were not good guys, but all we really wanted to do was to change our car, make it go faster, be little young engineers. Nobody had anything that was together, and of course we were fortunate in 1948 when Pete came in, Peterson, with Hot Rod Magazine, and we were down at the LA Armory. We were able to first start getting a feel of it, and then the movie industry loved what we were doing, made good film interest because it was exciting.
Right.
And that whole decade of the 50s was just absolutely exciting and was great. In fact, the best part was when Wally Parks came in 1955 with organized racing out at the Santa Ana airstrip, and we would run out there and then actually race there, and we didn't have to race the streets. So the film industry, of course, gave us great coverage because it filtered the whole United States and Canada. And then when Peterson came in with Hot Rod and Motor Trend and Rod and Custom, that again covered the enthusiasts and other car builders all over the world, and that helped tremendously, see. So it was kind of fun. That was kind of a decade. I kind of formulated it as the pioneering was in the 40s, that span of a decade, and then the 50s came again where you had now you're reaching the public with Peterson and the publications and the movie industry. Then came the 60s, which is really exciting because now came television. That means you were at every home in the United States, and they were watching what was happening, and we kind of kicked it off with that funny little car called a Monster Coach.
I remember that car.
Yeah, and that funny family just absolutely captivated the audience. And
well, Jack Coogan was a friend of mine.
Yeah,
his
Jack.
brother and his younger brother Robert and I went to high school.
Yeah. Jack was a very close friend. I did some work on his little wagon. He was when he was living down in Palm Springs. We had a lot of fun with Jack.
Dodie.
Yeah, he was great things to do things with. And then, of course, that television decade from the Munsters came Pow, Bang, Wow, which is probably the most popular car in the world. That was the Batmobile, and with Adam West and Burt Ward. And every time you would have a star, I would love to be in the Batman series.
Yeah.
And fortunately, which is kind of interesting right now, is that we're right back into that cycle because we are now going to shoot back to the Batcave with the original Batmobile here at the Peterson Museum starting the next week. We'll be filming all of the next 30 days with the Batmobile. It's an exciting story, really exciting, and I think your audience and the viewers would sure love to hear about the story, but I can't let it out because it's kind of like a secret. See?
It's okay.
But it's going to be filmed at Peterson and in many other locations all over the Southern California, and it is going to be a great film with Adam West, Burt Ward, Frank Gorshin, Julie Newmar, Yvonne Craig, and it's back to the Batcave. So it's cute, very cute.
What impressed me with the work you did, you were pre-fiberglass. I mean, when you did your early work, this was hacksaw and welding and, you know.
In the old days,
bending steel.
Yeah, we didn't have equipment. You know, we were lucky if we had a suede sandbag that we pounded with a wooden mallet. And, I was very fortunate. I had a settling welder and I had an arc welder, and no forming equipment at all. It's just down the right, hard
So when you wanted to
hand
bend
labor.
something, you just
Form it, make it, and fortunately that all the tools that I had in the 1950 era is down here at the Peterson Museum. We set up a little Barris custom 1950 shop with a chopped Mercury in there, and it just absolutely adorable because it does show what we did in the 50s. And I was kind of fortunate because I liked doing the work, and the chop a top at that time, to get that aerodynamic design, you'd have to split the top and weld it and hammer weld it. It took a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I finally, a young man came in from England with a roller. They called him the English roller, and it was just a big arch with a couple of dies, and I watched how he did it. I made one and made a couple of dies, and I finally found out to chop the top instead of splitting it, cut the whole section out, make a wire mesh showing what you want, roll it on the roller out of 20 gauge cold roll, and just fit it in there, and I'll have one little seam here, one little seam here, and it was just...
I remember when those rollers, I never understood how they worked
Yeah.
because I wasn't, that involved in it, but
Yeah, they worked very good because there were two dies that roll together, and as you form it with the different dies, you can feel it. Again, it was a feeling in your fingers. You can feel what you want and watch when you roll it.
It just made some perfect curves and beautiful bends in the metal.
Then I had an old Milwaukee air hammer that was used for straightening metal, but I took and put it on a stand with two, and it would rivet like that, so you could pound instead of pounding with a hammer. I had this machine would take and rivet. Then I could feel the forming of the metal, and that did a lot of good too. So it was a little things that we had to again make happen. And of course, fortunately today you got cutters, you got diamond cutters, you got MIG welders, you got metal shapers, you got just about everything that you could do with machine work, and computers, where in the old days was just all done by hand.
Yeah. You did it the hard way.
Well, you had to, like I said, pioneering and learning and teaching, because there was nobody to teach you. We were in the old industry like yourself. We were all self-taught, and we had to get in there and just do it, and make mistakes and find out mistakes you made and do it over and try till you get it right. And that was the fun part about it, is because you learn from your mistakes, and then you were able to, through the publications of Hot Rods and Carcraft and all of them, be able to photograph how it was done. So the guy back east doesn't have to make that mistake. He was able to follow.
Peterson had that was one of the big things in his books, both Motor Trend and particularly Hot Rod, was all the how-to stuff. And I can remember, because I worked for Pete.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
and,
that.
I can remember, articles on how to do this and how to pull your running boards and do this,
The roll the body, French the headlights, and recess the plates, and body roll panels, and weld the seam of the hood, and how to do it. And of course, we were working with lead. There was no what we call plastic Bondo in those days. So in forming with lead and the heat, you had a lot of shrinkage, a lot of warpage. You had to contend with that. You had to work it out, find out what was the best way to eliminate that, because it was just a lot of handwork. But it was a good forming. Then I did all those spotlight books for Pete. That was the little bitty books, and they were all little how-to books. And then the yearly annuals came out, where after we finished the different ones, then we had the annuals that showed the various cars all in finished forms. And it was an exciting time to do that, because it was such an educational thing for any one of the young people that wanted to get into customizing and painting and flaming and striping and all this different things, because graphics, color was very important, as well as the forming of the car. And that was the big strides that made the publications become more and more popular.
Pete really brought legitimacy to that, made it an industry.
Well, that was the important fact, that he had the foresight when we did that first hot rod show at the LA Armory. That's when he decided, because he was a PR guy for the studios. He was running for two studios, and he was very promotional minded. And right away, his mind got to thinking, and then he said, "Well, gee, what if we got to put this out on paper and put it into a publication where we can go beyond just a show or locally Southern California and hit the guy back in Fargo, North Dakota, or Winnetka, Conecuh, whatever." It was kind of fun to do, and many nights were spent up at what we call 5959. And we'd be up on Hollywood Boulevard pasting up articles in the middle of the night, my wife, myself, Shirley, and Pete. And I remember the first shots we photographed in 1949, right after the LA Armory. Pete was photographed by Pete.
Yeah.
He had his little Rolleiflex out there, and I was taking Rolleiflex shots, and we were shooting this little section channel 41 Ford. And we had a little dog that we wanted to be in the picture to show how low the car was and how low this little dachshund dog was. And finally, I was out there with the photograph. I said, "Pete, you got to get in the car, because the dog is not looking. He's looking at us, and we want him to look at the car." So he gets in the car and gets underneath the door. And he's rapping on the door. The dog looks up, and click, I take the roll. So it was really, it was a hand-to-hand, real hard ways to go, and we found ways to do it. So it was a great period of time. Very much so. It was very enjoyable for a lot of us. There was some great guys that came up in that period of time, the Winfields and the Joe Bailons and the Cushenberrys and the Valley Custom Boys and the Ayala Boys on the east side. It was a group of good guys that was customizing by hand that came out and did some Jerry Summers and Porter. A lot of the guys you remember, too, from the racing areas.
Onions?
Yeah, Summers and
Summers,
There were some fun times with them pioneering the same way, and we just enjoyed the industry that we had to perfect.
And it was very, very particular to California, to Southern California. It spread out.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like Southern California, maybe it's the climate that makes us feel so fun and comfortable, because all of the automobile innovations and designs and concepts seems to come here, and that's why Detroit and as well as the importers bring in their advanced studios somewhere around here in Southern California, so that their young designers would get up in the morning and look at the sunlight and get all freshened, and they go in there and they get that pencil designing something great. So
I've often wondered just why is it that so much starts right here? You know, it really does.
Well, I travel to an awful lot of the World Wheel shows and Autoramas and Rod Custom shows all over the United States. And when you start going to the east and you get up in the morning, you see the brown trees and you see the brown grass and you see snow on the ground, you don't feel like drawing a good-looking automobile. So I think that it stems from the fact that our climate and our people are very styling conscious, very concept acceptable to something that is different, and not having it what we call another Me Too. And we enjoy that part of it.
Well, year-round living.
Well, we do.
Go to Buffalo, New York in October. Everybody goes inside. They don't come out till
That's right.
till April or May.
I do a show in April, and I'm lucky to get out of there before the snow still keep coming. No, it's but we do have a worldwide sport craftsmanship that is very professional now throughout. I just finished this Fast and Furious series, and we got these rice burners, these tuner cars, we call them, imports that are
I like that
racing.
rice burners.
Yeah, they're kind of cute, and it's this era of hot rodding. These are the young guys with these Hondas and Toyotas and Mazdas.
I live in the valley, as you do, used to. I don't know if you still do.
Yes.
You drive out around Cal State Northridge. I don't care what you're driving. These guys are going to come blowing by you in their Toyotas.
They got the sounds, and they got the graphics, and they got all of this Kenwood loud musical systems going, and they got
Side of the car.
ground effects packages, and it's exciting because, again, it's another part of our industry and our history, because it's elevated from the hot rodding of what we did in the 50s with Wally and Pete and everybody else, Ray Brock, who's left us forever, regretfully, and we just now have it where these young guys between 18 and 35 are running these rice burner tuner cars, and it's a fun part, and we found out that it's just another part of the customizing and racing and things, and again, now it's all been reorganized. The police department reorganized the street racers that we did in the 50s today in the 2000 era, and we got different tracks now that they run into the various little airports, and so we got the tuner guys off the streets now.
Some of the things they're doing with the, as you call them, the rice burners, are just amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of different innovations. They use a lot of reflective lights, a lot of tube lights. They're using neons underneath the cars.
Yeah.
A lot of dials so you can look and see. I just finished the cars for a new movie with Vin Diesel, who is our real hot kid of the era with Mark.
I like him.
Yeah, and he does a great job. So we did a movie now called XXX, Secret Agent. He's a young American boy,
I've seen some
and
stuff.
he goes over to Prague and Austria to become our American James Bond. And being an American James Bond young, he doesn't drive an Aston Martin, a Beamer, or a Lotus. He comes whopping in with a 1967 hot GTO Pontiac.
Okay.
And it's a goat, and that thing is really cute. We got a big hood on the front, scoop, and it's got flames going out, headlights flip, rockets come out, and otherwise it's pretty well discreet. It's dark purple, blue, and we got side pipes coming, and it's colorful. The door handles are off so you can remote the doors, and then we got a rotary machine gun, and the whole dash has got instruments just full of different dials, and so you can tell what's going over here, and all this security secret agent things, and this young guy goes over there and he performs a heck of a job. the same director, Rob, directed the same one from Fast and Furious. So we know we got some exciting scenes. And
I saw Fast and Furious.
yeah, Fast and Furious was very good. We're getting ready to shoot the sequel. So we'll be into another era. And, but the automobile parts play a very, very important part in the automobile industry. In fact, now the new James Bond with Pierce Brosnan has got a real hot, big Aston Martin. Just a very small price of about $400,000.
Okay.
And you got to have more than one car, because when you film, you never can tell. You might hit something or blow a tire or something like that,
Right.
and you have to have a backup so that in case something goes wrong, you can bring another car in. You can't lose the filming for the day. And so it was, like I said, cars played a very, very important part. In fact, the Munsters was a good example. It was kind of a kickoff. Universal had more fan mail came in for the Munster coach than it did for the Stars.
Really?
So that's why
Describe that car for the people who haven't
the
seen it.
Munster coach is the family, of course, was a monster family, supposedly a Frankenstein that became funny with Fred Gwynn. He's 7'10" tall, and Yvonne DiCarlo, she's vampire. Al Lewis, he is the Dracula, and little Butch Patrick is the little Eddie, and poor little Pat Priest, she's the straight one, and everybody thinks that she's something wrong with her. The other family, they think they're straight. Well, when they called me to do the show, they said, well, we're using a hearse for him because he's supposed to be ghoulish. And I said, well, that's not funny. It's not part of your show. Your show is humorous and it's going to be entertaining. So about Friday night, I went in and grabbed my wife, Shirley, and got my little sketching guy. We went into the den and we started sketching away, and I got a old text and I put 3 Model Ts together, Touring Model Ts together, stretched the frame, put a hot 289 Ford engine in there with 10 carburetors with tubes coming out and coffin handles and a piggyback for little Eddie and big wide slicks in the back and big brass radiator with a skull on it and a big shift sticking way up here with a skull on it and spiders all over. And I brought the drawing into Mosier and Connolly, with the producers of the show, on Monday morning, and they were they said, well, can you do this? I said, well, sure. I said, when do you have time? He said, well, we got to start shooting within 5 weeks. I said, well, I had to do a Batmobile within 3 weeks. I think I can make a Munster coach within 5 weeks. So the big part about it is that the toy industry is what made us really also escalate. The miniature forming, when we tried the first most famous car in 1960 was the a la carte. That was the most popular hot rod, Grand National winner for 2 years in a row, and we made a toy of it. Not really a toy, a hobby plastic kit. And it just went like wildfire. So the toy industry's leaped in, Hot Wheels and Revell and AMT and Mattel and all these. And it just escalated from the hobby kits right into the die-cast. And the die-cast industry is making duplicates. Like Dan Mary Bitt made a beautiful duplicate of this Hero Hata Merc, and it's such a treasure to have the little 1/24 scale sitting there on your collector's table with the spotlights moving and the doors opening and the trunks and hood coming up. And they just finished the a la carte. The a la carte, they actually put the airbags with coil springs in the suspension. In 1/24 scale, you would move the car up and down just like it would. It's unbelievable what they do in this industry. So the toy industry was a very big monetary value to all of us, because not only we were able to communicate through the Peterson publications, we now are communicating through the Walmarts and the Kmarts and the Toys R Us and the various KB toy collectors and hobby stores. So it became a major value for all of us in the industry. So it was another part that was a big fun throughout the whole aspect.
You told me a story. A couple of years ago, you and I ran into each other, and you were involved in a promotion. I don't remember the details of what the promotion was, but you had acquired the Jimmy Dean wreck.
Yeah.
There was a story about how it was shipped.
Yeah. The whole story started with, I became very close friends with Jimmy on Rebel Without a Cause, because I built the Mercury, the 49 Mercury used, and I did all of the stunt type work for his chicken scenes where we raced off the Palos Verdes hills.
Okay, right.
So he loved cars and he loved to race. So I would play with showing him how to customize or do some stuff to his little Porsche Speedster, and then he got together with Von Neumann and he said, well, I want that big Spider. He wanted that big hot car, which was the big race car that period of time. And so when he acquired the Spider, I painted this different numbers and everything on it, and we kind of called him Little Bastard. The reason why we call him Little Bastard is because he never conformed with the establishment. If you wanted something to be blue and he really felt like you wanted it yellow, it would be yellow as far as he's concerned. You can put blue, green, anything else, but that's the way he was. But he was such a natural. He never did, in doing Rebel Without a Cause, he was exactly like that kid was in Rebel Without. He was a militant. He would not conform, but he didn't have to act it. He was the part.
He was that.
Absolutely. When he did every movie that he did, 3 famous movies he did, he could portray and not act and be a part. And that was what's so interesting. And he did the same thing with racing. He was like a Von Neumann and Paul Newman and Steve McQueen and Garner. They were good drivers, and Jimmy was getting that way. And when he finally was going up to, we loaded the car on the trailer over in Sherman Oaks, and he was getting ready to go up, and then he suddenly said, I had Bill Hickman, my stuntman, that showed him how to drive, and he says, I want to drive it up. And we said, come on, Jimmy, it's 350 miles, you know, you want to have the car fresh when you get up to race. No, I want to drive it. So I said, fine. Wolf, his mechanic, went with him, and off they went up, got through Bakersfield. They got a ticket for 65 miles an hour, which is not very fast anyhow, no speeds. Then he goes into Blackwell Corners, and he gets his last bottle of Coke and an apple, and then he hits Highway 41 and he gets to 40 where they make the junction, and regretfully Turnip Speed, that was the man's name, with a Ford Sunliner, made a left turn into the, didn't see him, the car just kind of, and Wolf said to him, Jimmy said to Wolf, he says, Wolf, you think the guy's going to stop? And Wolf says, no, Jimmy, he's not going to stop. So instead of hitting the brakes like normal sense would do, as a guy that used to racing, he kind of kicks in how you would kick the gear down. You want to get some power, you want to get away from where he's going. You kicked it down in the gear, put his foot in it, and as the guy made his left turn, Jimmy went to go around him. And if the guy would have just stopped for 1/10 of a second, but you know, destiny's there, you don't know what, and when it hit that aluminum car, which had no roll bars, no inside bars, it was just a light shell, and the steering wheel come up and caught his neck and everything. And so the family we were very close with Marcus Winslow, who Jimmy lived with when he was going to school, and I said, well, let me have the car. I want to put it together and tour a lot of these police conventions and have a safety driving thing and everything, because it wasn't an illegal safety. And in fact, the collision, when they computerized it, said he was doing 59.2 miles an hour when he hit that car.
Really?
So it wasn't a hot speed type thing. It was just the fact that it was destined. The guy didn't look, didn't stop, and hit him. But we took the car, and I just pieced it together, still left it wrecked. So I looked in, we toured the highway patrol, and I finally sent it to a police convention in Florida, in Miami, and they loaded on the truck, and 8 days later the truck gets here. I got the title, the display and everything. We opened up the trailer, and no car. It's totally gone. And we asked the truck driver, and he said, well, I don't know. And I went, who would want that old wrecked car? Nobody of any real consequence. So we run a trace and everything, and nobody could figure it out. They gave him tests and everything. We just don't know what happened to the car. So about 10 years later, in fact, there was a fellow named J.J. Arms, who was an international detective out of El Paso, Texas. I was doing a surveillance car for him. And I told him the story. I says, JJ, you know, I don't know what happened with the car. Nobody could find it. All these hot pollutant detectives couldn't find out of the Brinks and everybody. And so he let me look at it. 30 days later, he comes walking in. He says, you know what, George? He says, that car never even got loaded on that truck. I said, what do you mean? He says, he was the only one who was smart enough to check the weighing stations all the way across the United States, and the truck never changed weights. So when it left Florida, it weighed a certain amount. When it got to LA, it weighed the same amount. So it was never loaded. Whoever stole the car stole it on the dock. And what for and what reason? And here it is 35, 40 years later. But I probably heard maybe 1,000 stories from people. Every time I go into a town, somebody comes up the stage, and they yank on me, and I says, yeah, can I help you? We know where the car is. I said, what do you mean, where's the car? He says, it's hanging from this guy's garage, and he's got it all wrapped up in plastic. Oh, what car? The James Dean car. I said, well, where is it at? Over there. I go inspect it, nothing. Go to another town. Oh, yeah, this guy's got it stuck in another thing, and he put it under the lake. He's got it hidden in the mud under the lake. I've heard more stories of where that car's appeared. Even guys would walk up with little plastic medallions with pieces of aluminum in their thing, and they call it the James Dean car. And I take one look at it, and I says, you know, you guys are pulling a little fraud here, because it's not the car. You got a piece of junk metal that you cut and make out and try to charge people money. But it is probably the most talked about history of cars, kind of like the James Dean car of the century. But
The fact that it vanished, you know, like
no, and there's no reason, because nobody have no. I know all the collectors. The biggest collector is a guy in Japan, and he would have loved to have it.
sure.
And
It wasn't something that you could put back together.
no,
Because
it was totally gone. Yeah, and there was a trail of. They kind of call it the curse of the James Dean's death car.
That was
because,
that was another point. Yeah.
yeah, the engine, because the engine was good. We sold it to a doctor. He took part of the engine, sold it to a race car guy, who went upside. Another doctor went upside down, killed himself. We took the transmission, gave it to another race guy. He went sideways, hit a bale, paralyzed his arm. Kid took pieces of steel off of the car when it was parked at the garage, and he called me about 5 years later. He says, take this piece of steel. I lost my job, I lost my wife, I lost my home, I lost this, I lost that. He says, this thing is a curse to me, you know. And I said, well, I sure don't want it.
It's not my fault.
So it was quite a lot. I had another kid try to take the steering wheel as a souvenir up in Seattle, Washington, fell down, broke his arm, and they were unloading the car in Phoenix, Arizona, and it fell off the trailer, broke guy's 2 legs, and we had it at Blackie's place at show in Fresno, and the building broke down. So we have had some stories that was really kind of adds to the curse of the James Dean.
Well, you had something too, didn't you? Have
well, I had a heart attack, which was I guess a normal thing.
yeah, right.
So I don't contribute it to the James Dean death car.
Okay, well, no, for this story, yes.
Yeah.
That
But
definitely.
we do. We have a tribute to Jimmy every year at the family's place in Fairmont, Indiana. And we have a big cruise with probably more custom Mercuries in the history of the United States that all come as a tribute to Jimmy
Oh,
at
beautiful.
Fairmont, and the family comes all out. And
When does that occur?
that is the September 22nd, at the day he died. And it's a very beautiful affair. We have 6,000 cars. And here's this little town of Fairmont, Indiana. In 3 days, they put about 40,000 people through there, and it has one stop sign. Can you imagine the traffic with one stop sign? But it's a great event. It's a major tribute to that. There's three very famous celebrities that I built and designed cars for that'll never die. And of course, that's James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, and Elvis Presley. So I was fortunate to do cars for each one of them, and they'll always be with us. And their cars will always be in museums and the various places. And it was a very highlight and an honor for my...
What did you build? I went to school with Marilyn.
Marilyn drove
Very nice high school.
Yeah, Marilyn was great. She was. She didn't like to drive an awful lot. I did 2 cars. One car she drove was a Chrysler 300 convertible, and she liked to be chauffeured. And then finally, Warner Brothers had commissioned me to do a Lincoln convertible for her. We extended the fenders and put the tire and everything in the back. And regretfully, she passed away before she was delivered. But she was. We designed it with her and worked with her on it, and she loved the car, and I think she would have driven this one more than she would have done the Chrysler. But it was a wonderful,
And what did you do for Elvis?
Well, Elvis, you just don't have enough fingers in your hand for the
Okay.
cars and the...
We got one of his cars down
Yeah,
below
we got one of
Boulevard.
these, and we got one of those, and we got the one other one in the Hollywood section where we did Easy Come, Easy Go with a little hot rod, but we did a limousine for him. He loved Cadillacs. The first one we did was a pink 57, 51. He loved the Cadillacs. We did a Cadillac limousine for him. The whole back end was shaped like a yacht, had the portholes like a yacht, tufted and rolled, all in gold frisee, and had a whole entertainment console in front of him. In those days, well, that was in the 60s, we had a gold refrigerated system for his refreshments. He didn't drink and he didn't smoke. And we had a gold shoe buffer so he could polish his shoes, and we had a gold makeup cabinet, and it was all tufted and rolled, and the outside was in gold and gold pearl. It's at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Memphis now. And he would never fly. He would always drive back and forth home, and we did a bus for him. And every time he drove a motor home, it broke down. So he finds out, I'm tired of this, George. I can't drive these motor homes. They're always breaking down. They're too small. So I went and bought a Greyhound bus, and we reconverted it, my wife and myself, and just plush, red velvet, all kinds of walnut, Ig Entertainment Council. Again, his boudoir, where his was shaped like he liked a yacht feeling. The portholes and the tufted, and we had a safe built into it. Makeup cabinet with all the little makeup bulbs, and we had the whole back lined in X-ray lead so you wouldn't get any sound. And he loved that bus. In fact, he used to drive truck years when he was a young kid. So I built a seat that fit his body. We sculptured it to his body and everything. We put it on hydraulics so that he could drive it. So it took us 6 months to build it, and finally one morning I get a call. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. George, I said, yeah, Elvis. He said, he was recording all night. He said, I'd sure like to drive my bus. And I just finished it about 2 or 3 days before. He never drove it yet. I said, fine. They drove him down in the limousine, and we jumped in the bus, and we all went to Vegas. Joe Esposito, the chief, everyone, and we're on our way to Vegas, and he just got in that. It was like ecstasy to him, his therapy. He got in that thing, he put the belts on, and that seat would move, and he had that big steering wheel, and we had that big 40-foot. It was enjoyable to watch him. He could get the relaxation out of something like that and cars. So he was a kind of a young man that nobody really understood. That he was the most polite person I ever met. Humble. He was like his mother. He got an upbringing from his mother. When we were doing the limousine in our shop, he would come in, take a look at it, show him this, show him that. He knew everybody in the shop. Hi, Mr. Tubbs. How you doing? I heard you were sick last week. Hi, Mr. Joe. How's your baby? Knew everything about, and everybody was Mr. Everybody. There was a black man was going by the shop, and he saw Elvis in the limousine. He comes running, and he had mineral water in a gallon jar. He comes running up, Mr. Elvis, I got to show you my water. And Joe and Chief and all the guys, they try to stop me. And Elvis, no, leave him alone. Comes up, I want you to try this water. He says, it's the best mineral water. He says, fine. We got a clean glass for him, poured it in there, drank. He said, fine, well, that's just great. Makes me. But that's the way he was. He would be so polite and nice to people, and it was a pleasure to work with him. And Priscilla became very close to us, and he was so respectful of himself and his living that when she first came here at 16 years old, from when he was in the service, and we had a party up at his Belvedere home, he's got time to bedtime, and he said, Priscilla, I want you to go stay with Shirley and George. I don't want you living in here. I think too much of you. And she stayed with us during the whole period of time that she was here in the United States. And that's how kind of respectful man he was.
Wow.
So I have a lot of stories I could probably tell. We could spend about 2 or 3 days in this round table, and but it's enjoyable to reminisce about the many people that I've had some very, very good close relations with in the custom and hot rod field. We've had some great guys out there between the Wally Parks and the gang that has done this. We've lost a few, and
so what are you doing now? Are you pretty much retired, or are you still?
I don't think I could enjoy retiring.
Well,
there's too much fun and activity out there, and the automobile industry is just escalating in different directions. I design and work with a couple of builders that are under my associates, and I only want to do certain cars that go out on tour. We just finished a CCC, which is called the Chrysler City Coupe, a little 41 business coupe, and I made it pre-48 because every cruise you go to, if it's over 48, they don't let you cruise in the cruise. So we picked out this little Chrysler 41 and really tricked it out. Instead of just doing what's traditional now, is that now you got this envelope body, full fenders, peanut headlights, slanted billet grille, and it's too repetitious. I like doing what we did when I did the a la carte in the 50s. I changed the face of a hot rod. The hot rod still at that period of time was just a little Deuce Roadster or a 29 or a 37.
Right.
And there was no real change until I took the a la carte and I reformed it. Still kept it as a 29, a little pickup, but reformed the body, reformed the fenders, painted underneath the fenders the same as on top. And if you turn it upside down and back and around, it'll all be just perfectly detailed. And so I felt that street rodding, who now is pre-48, needed a change. So that's why I designed this CCC, and we actually took this little business coupe and racked the top, sectioned the body, channeled it, put it on a Corvette chassis, split the fenders, put the pontoon fenders on it, flattened out the hood, V'd the front end, took a sunroof from the windshield all the way back to the rumble seat, still kept the rumble seat and everything, and basically it's still a 41 Chrysler, but it's nice and long and low and sleek. And Daimler Chrysler gave us a tradition and gave us a tribute, took us back to the Eyes of Design at Detroit about 2 weeks ago, and we were guests of the head of CCEO of Chrysler and all the gang from Ford and General Motors, all the designers. And we enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and showed them some of the things that customizers do with their many different cars. And so this is where we're at. There's just so much activity between doing all the movies with the Fast and Furious, and we just released about a week ago Scooby-Doo, which had a mystery machine in it with a little old chopped up van, and there was another cute little project. And of course, the fact that we're able to take these cars and display them is very important. People, they see it on screen or they see it in the magazines, but they say, well, gosh, can we see it? And this is what was so important about Peterson having this establishment where people can really come in and enjoy themselves and see customs and see $1 million cars and see Bruce's hot rod collection, see a part of a speed shop and a part of my old custom shop. It's the only place you can really get it all together.
I think they've done a wonderful job with the museum.
It's absolutely fantastic. I remember when we had our first museum together with Pete and myself in the 70s, which was called the Motorama, right next to the Chinese Theater. And of course, Pete at that time had a misfortune with his family, and which was a dreadful setback. And but I really spread it out. We now have another Star Car Museum in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, Daytona Beach, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, and Long Island, New York. We found out that whenever we build a movie car, we always build more than one. So we have 3 or 4 cars that will go into these various places throughout the United States. Back in Gatlin, Tennessee, somebody can't go out to Los Angeles. At least can enjoy the cars that we have in those areas. So we found it to be very, very fruitful for everybody, and it's enjoyed by all. And I love to see that people have a chance to view that these cars are real and that they are not just a drawing board fictitious piece.
Yeah, just more than just a roller.
Yeah.
That's great.
So you can see we get a lot of history that we could relate back to in all of our early times, and back to 1940 and on up to 2002. And
were you born in California?
No, I was born in Chicago. When I was 3 years old, I left Chicago and came out to Northern California, which is Sacramento area, and graduated through there. I came down to LA in the mid-40s and kind of liked the different things they were doing here, and people liked what I was doing. I guess that kind of was a kickoff.
Yeah.
And, I was able to do a lot of cars for many celebrities. The different Farrah Fawcett, Zsa Zsa Gabor, John Travolta, and just to name of the few, Tony Danza, Clark Gable.
What did you do for Gable?
Jaguar XK120, made a special top for him, got rid of some of the emblems, and it was a nice piece at that period of time. John Wayne I would build him a Pontiac station wagon every year. We'd raise the roof 6 inches and raise the door openings 3 inches, because he says, well, George, he says, when I want to get in that car, he says, I don't want to have to stoop over. I want to just come in there and sit down and sit. So it was fun building the car for him, and have a scenic cruiser roof on it. The funny part about when I put the first scenic cruiser, it came off an Oldsmobile, a roof in it, and we sealed it and everything like that. The first raid came and had a leak. He brings the car in from over Universal, and he's shooting that red picture, and he said, George, you all got my roof leaking. It's got drips on my head. Oh, yeah, the Duke was a very, very fun man. His whole family, Michael and Pat, we still remain friends for years, and we enjoy doing that car we had for him. And Jaja was another one. Everyone would think that Jaja would be a car gal, but she was really a car gal.
Really?
Yeah, we did a lot of cars for her, and one of great interest was her big Rolls-Royce limousine. It was a chauffeur-driven limousine with the front end open and the back compartment. And she'd come to the shop in her coveralls, and we'd have the whole thing gutted out and everything. And she said, well, now I want the seat put here, and I want my makeup cabinet right here, and it's all gold-plated, gold chrome, gold mirror, gold everything. Now, I want to be able to slide over here, and I want my guest, and here's the wine cabinet. They want it to fold out in knurled walnut. I want 2 gold goblets, and I want a gold container to pour the wine. And in the back of the seats, she said, I want my name in gold, Jaja, with all the jewelry, rubies and sapphire. I mean, it was great. But she got in there. She was part of that car. She loved that car, and so we had a lot of fun. We painted a gold pearl, gold plated everything on the outside. So you can see the women do it too. They
Very conservative.
Yeah, very, very conservative. Of course, the most elaborate one was Liberace, because he was a showbiz guy, and we had $10,000 worth of rhinestones throughout the whole car.
I never saw this car.
Yeah, it was a '54 Cadillac Eldorado, first Cadillac he got. We did the seats in the musical, like the piano keys of the seat, and the base of the seat had the notes written out from his theme, I'll Be Seeing You. The hood ornaments were sterling silver grand pianos, and when you open the little lids on them, they'd be singing his song, I'll Be Seeing You.
Oh, my
And
God.
the name Liberace, the way he spelled it, we did it all in rhinestones and gold and everything. But he was such a great guy. He was so joyful. He loved to have his cars. We did a dune buggy for him. We did Rolls Royces for him. And he loved to have the cars on stage, so he would drive them on stage. But we had a lot of fun. He was one of the first guys. He was one of the first 50s.
He lived out in the valley.
Yeah, he sure did.
Had a swimming pool shaped like a piano.
He was right out there, right off of Ventura Boulevard, very much so. So you can see, I couldn't enjoy my life retiring.
No, I don't think so.
No, there's too many things that are even happening today, not only in the film industry, but in the collectors areas and the various shows we're doing all over the United States, and friends that we have that we're able to visit, such as yourself and Pete and Bruce and Dick and everybody. And so I found it to be more fun to kind of take a quick jog down here at 10 o'clock in the morning and say hi to everybody.
No, I'm really glad you did.
And have a time to maybe reminisce a little bit about some of my history.
It's been wonderful. It's been a fun thing for us, too, to hear these stories and capture some of this,
Well, it's stories that many of your audiences never get a chance to see or hear about, because you have to kind of get into a little round table discussion and kind of get talking, and you bring up names and bring up incidences, and then you start saying, oh yeah, I remember this and I remember that, and who was this and who was that, and it's great times that we had together.
Really appreciate your coming down.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks very much.
Looking forward to seeing many other people throughout our next period of decades coming up.
Yes, you will. Thanks very much.